Shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, girls.
Thank you. So we open with those words describing the beauty and the life that is all around us in nature during this time of year. And just as those flower buds are opening up, we too can open ourselves up to Shabbat tonight and the magic that Shabbat can bring. So whether you know the words, the Hebrew words or not, you can always sing Yalalai. We're going to start Kabbalat Shabbat with Psalm 95 on page 130.
Tzur Yishenu, Lechu neranena l'Adonai, Nariya letzur Yishenu, Nekadma fanav betodah, Mizmirot nariya lo, Nekadma fanav betodah, Mizmirot nariya lo. Ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai lai.
On the next page,
Shiro l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiro l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiro l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom le'yom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo bechol ha'amim nifleotav, ki gadol Adonai u'olam me'od, norahu al kol Elohim. Ay, 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 alay, lalay, lay, alay, lalay, lay, alay, lalay, lay, alalay, alalay, alay, lalay, lay, alay, lalay, lay, alay, lalay, lay, alalay, alalay, yalay, lalay, lay, alalay, alalay, yalay, lalay, lay, yalalay, lay, 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 yay, lay, 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 yay, lay, 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 yay, lay, lay, lay.
page 133, Mizmor Shiru.
Mizmor shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, ki niflaot asa, Hoshia lo yamino zroa kodsho hotia, Adonai Yeshuato, Einei hagoyim gilas likato, Zachar chasto ve'emunato, Leveit Yisrael, Ra'u kol asei haaretz, et Yeshuat Eloheinu, Hariu l'Adonai kol haaretz, Pitzchu ve'ranenu ve'ezra,
Yalalai.
Yalay, lay, 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 yay, lay, lay, yalay, lay, 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 lay,
on the top of 134, when we say Zamru Ladonai, we sing praise to Adonai. I think, especially with this setting, this music for this piece, we have a chance to kind of take a breath together and let go of whatever happened this week, whatever you had to do work-wise, school-wise, or anything that was stressful, and just be here right now. Take it all in. Enjoy this moment. We'll sing together, Zamru Ladonai. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Zameru, zamru Ladonai. Zameru, zamru Ladonai. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Your voices sound beautiful. So we're going to turn to Lecha Dodi, page 138, and we're going to do this tune that we started last week. Lewis knows what I'm talking about. So this is, it might be new, or you might have heard it before. It's a Sephardic melody for Lecha Dodi that we did with our band last Friday night. It goes like this. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Here we go. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 1. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, im mekor ha'beracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sofa ze b'mashlevat tchila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 3. Mikdash melech ir melucha, umitzei mitoch ha'avecha, rav לשבת לעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם לה. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki va'orech umiori, uri uri last verse.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצורה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה.
Last time.
לך דודי, דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, פני שבת נקבלה. So we'll remain standing as we turn ahead to page 263 and prepare for Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
נלמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי.
מחייכון וביומכון וחיי דכו בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריבי מרו. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם ועמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה
בריחו
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה.
תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמא
וימרו.
אמן.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated. We'll join together on page 265, Ma'ariv Aravim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim. B'chokhma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishana itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom u'mevi layla, uma'avdil ben yom u'ven layla. Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid imloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, v'shofeinu v'kumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה ואהבתך. אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך בכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen.
So as we prepare for Pesach coming next week, we think about these words of redemption a little bit differently than we do throughout the rest of the year. As we kind of place ourselves in the Seder, we are reliving that experience. That's part of what we're supposed to do as we experience the whole, all of the steps of the Seder. We put ourselves back in the shoes of our ancestors as they experience bondage, and as we think about how it feels to taste freedom, we sing these same words that they sang so long ago. Mi chamocha, page 270.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה לינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amen. Page 271.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים.
So earlier this evening, we had our family Shabbat. This has been a Temple Sholom tradition for quite some time, that each month we have a special Shabbat where we invite young families to come and have a Shabbat dinner, and then a kind of two different age-appropriate services. We have a little kid service and a big kid service and a little mini oneg. It's very sweet, and it's the first time we've done it back here in the shul since the pandemic started, and it was amazing to have all of these young families here in the building with so much life. But the thing that I found to be the most amazing thing was that the kids who used to be in the little kid service were now in the big kid service. And it just kind of blew me away, as you know, and it's amazing also the growth of the community, that service used to be quite small, the big kid service, and now it was big, and not just in their height and their age, but in their sense of being here on Shabbat. And I think that there is really something so beautiful about, young kids who have that experience of growing up in a shul and feeling so at home, and sometimes that involves running around like, as they do, but it's okay. It's to be able to have that sense of belonging and place, and also that sense of Shabbat, that we come together and gather in community on Shabbat is such an essential part of Judaism, and we love it, and we're so glad that that has returned. So let's sing together V'shamru, all about what it is to observe and to treasure Shabbat, page 272.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ים ברי לי, שבת שבת, ים ברי לי, שבת שבת, ים ברי לי, שבת שבת, שבת שבת שלום. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ים ברי לי, שבת שבת, ים ברי לי, שבת שבת, ים ברי לי, Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Please rise as we continue with the Amidah, page 274.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekoneh Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עבר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני בחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Amen. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Amen.
Please be seated. We'll continue on page 279, Ritzeh.
Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu be'alecha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ahava tekabel u'tehi leratzon tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael Amecha El Karov Lechol Korav Penei El בחסדיך וחוננו, שפוך רוחך עלינו, ותחזינה עינינו, בשובך לציון. ברחמים, ברוך אתה, אדוני, המחזיר שכינתו לציון.
When we think about the Pesach Seder, probably the most well-known tune is Dayenu. I would say that's probably at least the catchiest that everyone can sing along with. But it's an interesting philosophy of Dayenu. Dayenu, it would have been enough. Had you only done this, God, it would have been enough. But then you did this. If you only done this, that would have been enough too, but then you did that. And this sense of that type of gratitude to see what our blessings are that are above and beyond what maybe we might expect, or above and beyond, maybe, I don't want to say what we deserve. I think we deserve things in the world. We deserve happiness and blessings. But I think that a recognition that we often gain more than we really realize is an important part of gratitude. It's the Dayenu mentality. And, we don't sing it all year long, which is okay. I think it has its place once a year. But if we can think a little bit about how to approach our lives with that sense of gratitude, of realizing that each blessing builds upon the next, that we are so fortunate in so much in our lives. So we will join together on 280 on our prayer of gratitude of Modim, 4 lines from the bottom, V'al nisecha sheb'chol yom imanu, for all of these miracles and wonders that are with us each day.
ועל ניסך שבכל יום, ערב ובוקר וצהריים, מעולם קיווינו לך, מעולם קיווינו לך, הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, והרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך, מעולם קיווינו לך.
Our prayer of Shalom for our world, a world that needs peace so very badly, page 282, Shalom Rav.
So I also got to bring us this piece last week, a new melody for Shalom Rav. So yeah, I know, shocking, right? There are other melodies for Shalom Rav. Might be shocking, but see what you think. Kind of a different take on the text, on this prayer for peace. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tazim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tazim le'olam. Ki ata lechol hashalom.
ישראל עמך, תשים, תשים לעולם, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים, תשים לעולם, בכל עת, בכל עת ובכל שעה, בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים, תשים לעולם, שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים, תשים לעולם.
A moment now for silent prayer. We'll turn now to page 371 to offer a Mishaberach, a prayer of healing for all of those in our lives and our extended congregational family who are ill and in need of healing. We think especially tonight of Eli Pont, Ryan Annis, Nora Speed, Asher Gavriel ben Mordechai Yehoshua Sarah Elishev, Riley Tregabov, Eve Silverman, Isabel Somech, Sigrapi Pramko, Richard Schwartzstein, Milton Lackman, David Coulter, Apollonia Wilczynski, Nelson Rudlier, Paula Freeman, Loretta Atkins, Nancy Evans, Elena Cobb, Ann Albert, Bill Cohen, Carla Zivit, Rose Godfrey, Doris Medved, Janet Gelb, Alicia Eckersley, Gina Angus, Bob Fanning, Avram Sudak, Roel Granberg, Yehudit Bat Avraham Basara, Ralph Schulman, Judy Steiner Losberg, Sanford Cohen, David Shlomo Gorney, Andrea Jarsbiak. If there are other people you are thinking of you would like to mention, I invite you to rise and share their names. Join together in this prayer of healing, page 371.
Avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. So we will, now I'm very happy actually to invite Cantor Cohen to share some words of announcements and our Devar Torah this evening.
Okay, so on Sunday, April 10th at 9 a.m., we have the Shalom Hartman Institute virtual event, Shrinking the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, Practical and Ethical Dilemmas. Should be very, very interesting, hearing from author Micah Goodman. And then we have the Chocolate Seder that the 4th through 7th grade students are invited to join us for on Sunday as well at noon at 12 p.m. right outside in our Temple Shalom garden with pizza. It's before Passover, so it's okay. That should be a lot of fun. And this Tuesday, any Shalom Shishim people over 60, if you are interested in joining us for socializing and games afternoon, please register online. It's on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Then, of course, we have our second night Seder Saturday night in a week on the 16th for young families at 5 p.m. and adults at 6:30 p.m. in Sarah's tent. I believe there are still some spots available, so just a few. So register now if you haven't registered yet. It's going to be amazing. And finally, Sisterhood Choir will be beginning on April 27th, meeting in person Tuesdays at 7 p.m. to get ready for the Sisterhood Shabbat this summer. So check that out, and more announcements in the handout and also online. Now, this week's Torah portion is Metzora, which kind of gets into the nitty-gritty of how the priests would diagnose and treat skin disease, as well as mold and mildew on one's house, and bodily emissions. All of these conditions would cause you to be tameh, to be ritually impure, and would require a certain level of isolation or quarantine depending on the diagnosis. It might not normally seem like such an interesting topic, but of course, the past few years, it seemed weirdly, relevant. So I was sitting down to write this Devar Torah, and I very clearly remember the bar mitzvah student that spoke on this Torah portion last year at Congregation Beth Elohim, where I was in Brooklyn. And he actually had a very moving Devar Torah, where he talked about his own family's experience of quarantining well before the pandemic, because his younger brother had to have a bone marrow transplant. And because that compromises your immune system, the whole family had to self-isolate, sanitize their hands frequently, and do all the things that we've been doing before it was cool. And he explained this parallel of his own quarantine experience to the experience of the Israelites in this Torah portion who had recovered from tzara'at, this mysterious skin disease, and then had to reintegrate back into the community through a ritual purification. What surprised me about this kid is he didn't seem upset or angry at his brother for having to himself separate from his friends for that period of time, but instead he showed a level of compassion and wisdom that you don't normally see in a 13-year-old. And he seemed to understand, although it was no one's fault that he and his family would have to isolate themselves for a certain time in order to keep everyone safe, and eventually they would be able to resume their regularly scheduled lives. Now, a year later, many of us are still nervous to reintegrate back into society and come out of quarantine or self-isolation. We know that getting our vaccines and vaccine passports have been kind of like a modern ritual that said, a stamp on some level, we were okay to be back in the community. But we know that even vaccines are not a 100% guarantee of safety. I was speaking to someone last week who was so nervous trying to figure out whether they should come to an in-person event. Should I go? Is it too risky? What if I'm the one who brings COVID to the group? Then it would all be my fault. And if something happens, if someone tests positive, we would have to blame someone. So I know we're all familiar with this debate. Should we go out, put ourselves or others at risk? Especially as Jews, we worry just as much or even more about the risk that we pose to others. What are the potential dangers? Is it worth the benefit of being in person? Whose fault is it? Who's to blame if something happens? So we have this response to blame or shame other people or even ourselves out of fear. But that fear can ripple out and infect our relationships and communities. So our biblical scholar, Ellen Frankel, says, "We know only too well the fear of contagion, but we have yet to figure out how to manage our fear ritually as a community and how to reincorporate recovered individuals into our midst. Until we learn this, we will continue to let fear manage us." And a life lived out of fear is not really a life. Of course, we should be cautious. We can always opt out. But shaming people only leads to more fear and self-doubt. I turn to the words of Dr. Brené Brown, who is a shame researcher, who says, "Shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we are capable of change. That hope for change is central to our Jewish value of tikkun olam, continuing to make the world a better place. If we blame or shame one another, we're not able to bring that peace and light that we want to bring into the world." In her TED Talk, Dr. Brené Brown's Listening to Shame, she says, if you put shame in a petri dish, I love this for this Torah portion, it needs three things. Shame needs three things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. But if you put the same amount of shame in the petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. Whenever we encounter blaming or shaming behavior, we can be that magical ingredient of empathy. We can let our actions toward each other be guided by compassion rather than fear. Tonight begins Shabbat Hagadol, the last Shabbat before Passover, which can also help us see this parasha from another perspective. We can imagine how 400 years of slavery corroded the hopes and dreams of the Israelites. The people had been oppressed for so many lifetimes, they were unable to hold on to the hope that their situation would ever change. Even when Moses came to tell them they were going to be free, that redemption was coming, they didn't believe him. They couldn't believe him. Rabbi Rachel Timoner explains that it is so difficult as human beings to imagine the future, to believe in transformation, to see a larger time horizon, especially when we are oppressed. We come to believe the dominant narrative, to believe that the hierarchies of the society are divinely ordained, or at least inevitable. and to believe ourselves to be less worthy, less deserving, less good. This is shame. And shame is one of the only things that can dim our light. As you prepare for Passover, you may be planning to be with other people in person, maybe for the first time in 3 years. Whether at our community Seder here or in your homes with family and friends, you will have to assess your own comfort level and the current risks. But know that re-entry into society and community is not just about the provincial rules or the mask mandates, but it is also about the deeper emotional toll that the pandemic has had on us. It's only natural for us to fear for ourselves and for our loved ones, to succumb to that feeling of hopelessness that things will never truly change. That's just how the Israelites felt at the dawn of their redemption, at the start of our Passover story. Moving forward with hope is going to take a conscious effort on our part to tap into the chesed, the loving kindness and empathy for ourselves and for others. Together we can build a world not by tearing each other down, but by building each other up so that we may bring light and hope into the world. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with Aleinu, 586. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום להשבותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. On page 594, a reading before the Mourner's Kaddish. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. We read the names of those for whom we say Kaddish this Shabbat. I invite you, if you are here, to remember a loved one as I read their name aloud, to please stand in your place as you honor their memory. We're in Shloshim for Layla Sachs, Robin Sveinson, and Mark Zlotnick. And we mark yahrzeit of Rosalind Adirim, Robert Arnstein, Adele Baker, Coleman Belogas, Shoshana Berkovitz, Milton Bernstein, Edward Bjorsuth, Max Bobroff, B. Braille, Max Brooks, Tom Cohn, Kay Dunbar, Leonard Ellen, Hilda Everall, Carol Fader, Wolf Faust, Sylvia Finkelman, Cheryl Fishman, Miriam Garfinkel, Helen Gassoy, Adam Kale Golden, Randy Gorenberg, Deborah Goslin, Riva Holtzberg, Marcus Hotz, Abraham Ephraim Javidan, Maria Koshelev, Dr. Jack Letterman, Bill Levitt, Benjamin Lubell, Daniel Morris, Renee Nadell, Marilyn Newman, Ben Posner, Pauline Weinberg-Rappaport, Betty June Remick, Max Schachter, Sarah Seltzer-Millman, Mary Shanti, Harry Sheftel, Hyman Scheinen, Aaron Stabsky, Sam Stabsky, Harold Slate, Mark Steinberg, Harry Stewart, Sally Zinman. Any other names to mention for Kaddish? I invite you to rise and share them at this time. We stand now as one congregation and invite those who will to join page 598 in these words of Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shmei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. Yehi zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We say together, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So I'll invite you to remain standing. In a moment, we'll do Kiddush and Hamotzi. Just a reminder, this next Friday night is the night of First Seder. There will be no in-person Shabbat services here Friday night, but we will have, of course, Saturday morning for first day Yom Tov / Shabbat. So we hope that you'll join us then, as well as tomorrow morning at 10. So I'll do Kiddush.
Go for it.
Fantastic. If you want to follow along, it's on page 120, maybe? 20, I never remember. 122. Vayerav vayivoker yom hashishi, vayachulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevam, vayachal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa, vayishbot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa, vayevarach Elohim et yom hashvi, vayakadesh oto, ki hivo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim lasot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu v'acharta ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen.
Chaim.
Chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.